Evelyn Hart had everything: a corner office, a $50 million deal, and the respect that came with being the youngest CEO in her father's real estate empire. But on this cold evening, as rain streaked the windows of her empty office tower, she had no idea that the man quietly pushing a mop down her hallway was about to shatter everything she thought she knew about success. Marcus Reed had been invisible to her for 3 years, just another face in a gray uniform. But tonight, his soft-spoken words would expose a catastrophic flaw that could destroy her company's biggest deal. What started as a simple correction about building costs would ignite something far more dangerous. A connection that would force them both to choose between the safety of their separate worlds and a love that could cost them everything. The powerful CEO and the brilliant janitor were about to discover that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes falling in love means falling from grace. If you're watching this incredible story unfold, hit that subscribe button and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from everywhere. The elevator hummed softly as it carried Evelyn Hart to the 15th floor. Outside the windows, the city sparkled with evening lights, but she barely noticed. Her mind was already racing through tomorrow's presentation. $50 million, the biggest deal her company had ever seen. Evelyn stepped into the quiet hallway, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The offices around her sat empty now. Most people had gone home hours ago to their families, their dinners, their normal lives. She pulled her blazer tighter and headed to her corner office. At 32, Evelyn had worked hard to get where she was. CEO of Hart Investments, a mid-size real estate firm that her grandfather had started with nothing but hope and determination. Now she was about to close a deal that would secure the company's future for the next decade. She settled at her desk and spread the contracts across the mahogany surface. Numbers filled the pages: purchase prices, renovation costs, projected returns. Everything had to be perfect. Her father, Daniel Hart, would review everything tomorrow morning before the final meeting. He trusted her. But $50 million was $50 million. The sound of a vacuum cleaner hummed somewhere down the hall. Evelyn glanced at her watch. Nearly 9 o'clock. The cleaning crew would be making their rounds soon. She picked up her calculator and started running through the figures again. Labor costs for the renovation project, materials, permits, insurance. The property they were buying was a historic building downtown, and they planned to convert it into luxury apartments. The profit margins looked incredible, almost too good to be true. "Okay, Evelyn," she whispered to herself. "Let's go through this one more time." She pulled up the building inspection reports on her laptop. The structure was solid. The electrical systems needed updating, but that was expected in a building from the 1920s. The plumbing would require some work, but nothing unusual. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, Linda Moore. "Don't stay too late. You need to be sharp tomorrow." Evelyn smiled. Linda had been with the company for 15 years and treated Evelyn like the daughter she never had. But tonight, Evelyn couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. The vacuum cleaner grew louder as it approached her office. Evelyn looked up to see a tall black man in a gray uniform pushing the machine down the hallway. She'd seen him before but had never really paid attention. He was probably in his early 30s, with kind eyes and careful movements as he worked around the furniture. Marcus Reed had been cleaning these offices for 3 years now. He started his shift at 8 o'clock every evening and finished around 3 in the morning. It wasn't the career he'd dreamed of, but it paid the bills and let him help his mother with her medical expenses. He'd overheard enough conversations to know that tomorrow was a big day for the company. The CEO, Ms. Hart, had been staying late all week, preparing for some important meeting. Marcus respected her dedication, even if she'd never acknowledged his presence beyond a polite nod. As he cleaned the conference room next to her office, he could hear her talking to herself, reading numbers aloud. Something about maintenance costs and long-term projections. Marcus tried not to listen, but her voice carried through the thin walls. "Annual maintenance should run about $200,000, she said. "Maybe $250 to be safe." Marcus paused in his work. He'd studied building management in community college before his father got sick, and he'd had to drop out to help support the family. He'd learned enough to know that maintaining a historic building was expensive, much more expensive than most people realized. $200,000 for annual maintenance on a building that size. With that age? Marcus shook his head and went back to his cleaning. It wasn't his business. He was just the janitor. But the number bothered him as he moved through the office. He'd seen the building they were talking about. It sat just a few blocks away, its old brick facade beautiful but clearly showing its age. Buildings like that were money pits if you didn't account for everything that could go wrong. Marcus finished cleaning the conference room and moved toward Ms. Hart's office. Her door stood open, and she sat hunched over her desk, calculator in hand, brow furrowed in concentration. "Excuse me, ma'am," Marcus said quietly from the doorway. Evelyn looked up, startled. "Oh, hello. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you come up." "I'm almost finished with this floor," Marcus said. "I can come back later if you need quiet." "No, it's fine. Thank you." Evelyn turned back to her papers. Marcus hesitated. He should just walk away, mind his own business. But something about the way she was staring at those numbers made him speak up. "Ms. Hart, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you working on the Meridian Building project?" Evelyn looked at him with surprise. "Yes. Why do you ask?" "I've walked past that building for years. It's beautiful, but—" Marcus trailed off, suddenly feeling foolish. Who was he to question her business decisions? "But what?" Evelyn set down her calculator. Marcus took a deep breath. "The maintenance costs you were talking about, $200,000 a year? That building's going to cost you a lot more than that." Evelyn's expression grew cold. "I'm sorry, but I don't think building maintenance is really your area of expertise." The dismissal stung, but Marcus had expected it. "You're right. Sorry to bother you." He turned to leave. "Wait." Evelyn's voice stopped him. Something in her tone had changed. "What makes you think the maintenance costs are wrong?" Marcus turned back slowly. "That building has a slate roof, original slate from the 1920s. It's beautiful, but it's also almost 100 years old. Those roofs need constant attention, and when they fail big. We're talking about replacing sections that could cost hundreds of thousands at a time." Evelyn stared at him. "How do you know about slate roofs?" "I studied building management for 2 years at community college," Marcus said quietly, "before I had to drop out." "Oh." Evelyn looked down at her papers, then back at him. "What else?" Marcus stepped closer to her desk, careful to keep his voice respectful. "The heating system in a building that old, it's probably steam heat, right? Those systems are incredibly expensive to maintain properly. And the windows, if they're original, you're looking at constant repairs or full replacement. Energy costs alone could run $50,000 a year more than you'd expect." Evelyn pulled out a chair. "Sit down." Marcus hesitated. "I should probably get back to work." "Sit down," she said again, but gently this time. "Please." Marcus sat on the edge of the chair, his cleaning cart forgotten in the hallway. "Tell me what you see when you look at this building," Evelyn said. For the next hour, Marcus walked her through everything he knew about maintaining historic properties. The hidden costs that never showed up in initial inspections, the specialized contractors required for certain repairs, the city regulations that could double the price of simple projects. Evelyn listened with growing alarm. Every point Marcus made was logical, researched, and clearly explained. She pulled up photos of the building on her laptop, and he pointed out details she'd never noticed. Signs of water damage around the roof line, windows that had been patched rather than properly repaired, stonework that would need attention within the next few years. "According to my calculations," Marcus said finally, "you're looking at closer to $600,000 a year in maintenance costs. Maybe more." The number hit Evelyn like a punch to the stomach. $600,000 instead of $250,000. Over 10 years, that was an additional $3.5 million. The profit margin she'd been so excited about suddenly looked very different. "Are you sure?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "I could be wrong about some specifics, but the basic numbers are sound. Historic buildings are beautiful, but they're expensive." Evelyn stared at the contracts spread across her desk. Tomorrow morning, she was supposed to present this deal to her father and the board with complete confidence. Now, she felt like the ground was shifting under her feet. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus stood up. "I hope I didn't mess things up for you." No. You might have saved us from making a huge mistake." After Marcus left, Evelyn sat alone in her office, surrounded by papers that suddenly felt meaningless. She picked up her phone to call her father, then put it down again. She needed to think this through first. She spent the next 2 hours researching everything Marcus had told her. Historic building maintenance costs, slate roof repairs, steam heating systems. Every search confirmed what he'd said. By midnight, she had a new set of numbers. Numbers that showed the Meridian building project would lose money for at least the first 5 years, maybe longer. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Tomorrow's presentation would have to be completely different. Instead of celebrating a profitable deal, she'd have to recommend walking away from $50 million. But Marcus had been right. Completely, thoroughly right. A janitor had spotted a flaw that she, her advisors, and a team of consultants had all missed. She thought about his quiet voice, his careful explanation, the way he'd hesitated before speaking up at all. How many other smart people were invisible in her world? How many insights was she missing because she never bothered to listen? The building felt very quiet around her as she gathered up the contracts. Tomorrow would be difficult. Her father wouldn't be happy. The board would have questions. But at least they'd be making decisions based on the truth. As she waited for the elevator, Evelyn found herself wondering about Marcus Reed. What had happened to force him to drop out of school? What other dreams had he had to put aside? For the first time in years, she realized how lonely her life had become. Success had brought her money and respect, but not much else. She lived alone in a downtown condo, worked 70-hour weeks, and had dinner with her father once a month to discuss business. The elevator arrived, and she stepped inside. Tomorrow, she would have to find Marcus and thank him properly. Tonight, she just wanted to go home and figure out how to tell her father that their biggest deal of the year was falling apart. But as the elevator descended toward the lobby, Evelyn felt something unexpected. Relief. Better to know the truth now than discover it later when millions of dollars were already gone. Marcus had given her a gift tonight, whether he realized it or not. The question was what she planned to do with it. The next morning arrived gray and cold, with rain pattering against the office windows. Evelyn sat in the conference room at 7:30, watching her father review the revised numbers she'd prepared. Daniel Hart's face grew darker with each page. "You want to walk away from $50 million because the janitor thinks the roof might leak?" His voice carried the sharp edge she remembered from childhood. "Dad, it's not just about the roof. The maintenance costs were completely wrong. We would have lost money for years." Daniel set the papers down hard. "Evelyn, you can't run a business based on hallway conversations with the cleaning staff." "I spent all night checking his numbers. Everything he said was correct. That's not the point." Daniel stood and walked to the window. "Do you have any idea how this looks? We've been negotiating this deal for 6 months. Tom Keller has investors lined up. The whole industry is watching us." Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. She'd known this conversation would be difficult, but seeing her father's disappointment made everything worse. "I know it's not ideal timing, but not ideal." Daniel turned back to her. "Evelyn, reputation is everything in this business. If we back out now, people will think we don't know what we're doing." The conference room door opened, and Linda Moore entered with a tray of coffee. She took one look at their faces and set the tray down quietly. "Should I postpone the 9 o'clock meeting?" Linda asked. "No," Daniel said firmly. "We're moving forward as planned." "Dad, please, just look at the numbers again." "I've seen enough." Daniel picked up his briefcase. "Sometimes you have to trust your original instincts, Evelyn. Don't let doubt paralyze you." After he left, Linda sat down across from Evelyn. "Rough night?" Evelyn rubbed her temples. "I discovered we were about to make a huge mistake. Now Dad thinks I'm losing my nerve." "What kind of mistake?" Evelyn explained about the maintenance costs and Marcus's insights. Linda listened without interrupting, her expression growing more thoughtful with each detail. "So, this Marcus person, how did he know all this?" Linda asked. "He studied building management in college, had to drop out for family reasons." Linda was quiet for a moment. "You know, I've noticed him around here. Always polite, always careful about his work. There's something about him that seemed different." "Different how?" "Smart. Observant. Like he was seeing things the rest of us missed." The morning meeting was tense. Tom Keller, their external consultant, pushed hard for moving forward immediately. The investors were eager, he said. The market conditions were perfect. Any delay would signal weakness. Evelyn found herself caught between her father's expectations and her own growing certainty that Marcus was right. She asked for 24 hours to review some final details. 24 hours to do what? Tom demanded. "We've been over every inch of this deal." "Just to double-check a few maintenance projections," Evelyn said carefully. Tom's expression turned suspicious. "What's this really about, Evelyn?" "Nothing. I just want to be thorough." After the meeting, Evelyn couldn't concentrate on anything else. She kept thinking about Marcus's quiet confidence, the way he'd explained complex building systems with such clarity. By 3 o'clock, she decided she needed to talk to him again. Marcus didn't start work until 8, but Evelyn knew where to find him. Linda had mentioned seeing him at the coffee shop on the ground floor during his dinner break around 6 o'clock. She felt nervous as she rode the elevator down. What was she doing? Her father was right. This was highly unusual. CEOs didn't seek out janitors for business advice, but the numbers didn't lie. And Marcus had been right about everything. The coffee shop buzzed with the end-of-workday crowd. Evelyn spotted Marcus immediately, sitting alone at a small table near the window, reading a paperback book while he ate a sandwich. He looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Ms. Hart, is everything okay?" "May I sit down?" Marcus gestured to the empty chair. "Of course." Up close, Evelyn noticed details she'd missed the night before. Marcus had kind eyes and a gentle smile. His work uniform was clean and pressed. The book beside his plate was about sustainable architecture. "I wanted to thank you properly for last night," she said. "You were right about the maintenance costs. Completely right." Marcus studied her face. "You look like that's not necessarily a good thing. The deal's been in motion for 6 months. Walking away now is complicated." "But you're going to do it anyway?" Evelyn hesitated. "I don't know. My father thinks I'm overreacting." Marcus was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "Can I ask you something? Why did you listen to me at all? Most people in your position wouldn't have." The question caught Evelyn off guard. She thought about her usual routine, the long hours alone in her office, the endless meetings with the same circle of advisors, the isolation that had become so normal she barely noticed it anymore. "Maybe because I'm tired of only hearing what people think I want to hear," she said finally. Marcus smiled slightly. "That's refreshing." "Tell me about building management," Evelyn said. "What made you interested in it?" "My father worked construction his whole life. He used to take me to job sites when I was little. I loved seeing how everything fit together, the pipes, the electrical, the heating systems. It's like a puzzle, you know? All these pieces that have to work perfectly, or the whole building fails. What happened? Why did you leave school? Marcus's expression grew more serious. Dad got sick. Cancer. Mom couldn't handle the medical bills and the mortgage by herself. I took the first job I could find to help out. I'm sorry. Dad passed 2 years ago, but by then, going back to school felt impossible. Life just moved on. Evelyn felt a tightness in her chest. While she'd been climbing corporate ladders, Marcus had been holding his family together. The contrast made her own struggles feel small. Do you ever think about going back? To finish your degree? Marcus shrugged. Sometimes, but I'm 34 now. Starting over seems pretty scary. 34 isn't that old, says the successful CEO. They both laughed, and Evelyn felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. When was the last time she'd had a conversation that wasn't about quarterly reports or profit margins? Can I ask you something else? Marcus said. About the building deal. What would happen if you went ahead despite the maintenance issues? Evelyn considered the question. We'd probably break even eventually, maybe even make a small profit after 10 years. But it would be risky, and we'd tie up a lot of capital that could be used better elsewhere. And if you walk away, my father will be furious. Our reputation might take a hit, but we'd be free to pursue other opportunities. Marcus nodded slowly. Sounds like you already know what you should do. Knowing and doing are two different things. Yeah, Marcus said softly. They really are. That evening, Evelyn stayed late again, but this time she wasn't alone. Marcus had offered to show her more details about the Meridian building, and they'd spread blueprints across the conference table. See this section here? Marcus pointed to a corner of the building. That's where the original foundation meets the 1950s addition. Those joints are always problem areas. You get settling, water intrusion, temperature stress. Evelyn leaned closer to study the plans. She was very aware of Marcus beside her, his careful attention to detail, the way he explained complex concepts in simple terms, the quiet confidence in his voice. You really know this stuff, she said. I had good professors, and my dad taught me to pay attention to details. They worked until nearly 10 o'clock, going through every system in the building. By the end, Evelyn had a complete picture of what ownership would really cost. The numbers were even worse than she'd feared. Thank you, she said, as Marcus gathered up the blueprints. This has been incredibly helpful. I hope I didn't make things harder for you. Evelyn looked at him carefully. Marcus, can I ask you something? Are you happy? With your work, I mean? The question seemed to surprise him. Happy's a strong word. It's honest work. It pays the bills. I don't hate it. But it's not what you wanted to do with your life. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I stopped thinking about what I wanted a long time ago. It was easier that way. The sadness in his voice made Evelyn's chest ache. How many people were trapped in lives they'd never chosen? How many dreams got buried under necessity and circumstance? What if things could be different? She asked. Different how? Evelyn wasn't sure what she meant, but looking at Marcus, really looking at him, she saw someone who deserved more than emptying trash cans and vacuuming floors for the rest of his life. I don't know, she said honestly. But maybe we could figure it out. Marcus studied her face for a moment, as if trying to read her intentions. Ms. Hart, I appreciate everything you've said tonight. But I learned a long time ago not to hope for things that probably won't happen. His words hit her harder than she expected. When had she become someone that people couldn't hope around? What if I could change that? She asked quietly. Change what? What if I could give you a reason to hope again? Marcus was very still for a moment. Then he smiled, but it was a sad smile. That's a nice thought. But morning always comes, you know? And when it does, You're still the CEO, and I'm still the janitor." After Marcus left, Evelyn sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints and calculations. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. They needed to walk away from the Meridian building deal. But more than that, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's quiet resignation, his acceptance that good things weren't meant for him. Something about that felt fundamentally wrong to her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Early meeting tomorrow at 7 a.m. Be ready to move forward." Evelyn stared at the message. Tomorrow, she would have to choose between her father's expectations and what she knew was right. But tonight, she found herself thinking less about buildings and more about the man who'd helped her see the truth. Marcus Reed deserved better than the hand life had dealt him. The question was whether she had the courage to do something about it. The early morning meeting felt like a battle from the moment Evelyn walked into the conference room. Her father sat at the head of the table with Tom Keller and 3 board members. Their faces showed they expected good news. "I've reviewed everything one more time," Evelyn began carefully, "and I believe we should not move forward with the Meridian building." The silence that followed felt heavy and cold. Tom Keller leaned forward. "Evelyn, we've been through this. The deal is solid. The maintenance costs are much higher than we projected. We'd be looking at losses for the first several years." "Based on what analysis?" one of the board members asked. Evelyn hesitated. She couldn't very well say based on a conversation with our night janitor. "Additional research into historic building maintenance." Her father's expression grew darker. "Evelyn, I think you're overthinking this. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and move forward." "My instincts are telling me this is a mistake." Tom stood up abruptly. "I have investors who've been waiting 6 months. You can't just change your mind because you got nervous." "I'm not nervous. I'm being careful." "This is ridiculous," Tom said, gathering his papers. "Daniel, talk sense into your daughter. She's about to cost us all a lot of money." After Tom left, the board members excused themselves, leaving Evelyn alone with her father. Daniel sat quietly for a long moment, staring out the window at the gray morning sky. "What's really going on here, Evelyn? I told you, the numbers don't work." "No." Daniel turned to face her. "This isn't about numbers. You've never been afraid of calculated risks before. What changed?" Evelyn felt trapped between honesty and protection. How could she explain that a janitor had shown her things that teams of consultants had missed? How could she make her father understand without sounding like she'd lost her mind? "I just want us to make good decisions," she said finally. "We were making a good decision. Until you started second-guessing everything." The disappointment in his voice cut deep. Daniel Hart had built this company from nothing. His approval meant everything to her, but she couldn't ignore what she knew was true. "Dad, just give me one more day. Let me compile a full report on the maintenance issues." Daniel sighed heavily. "One day, Evelyn. But after that, we move forward. I won't let fear paralyze this company." That afternoon, Evelyn found herself unable to concentrate on anything. She kept thinking about Marcus's words the night before, about hoping for things that probably won't happen, about morning always coming. Linda knocked on her office door around 3 o'clock. "You look terrible." "Thank you for the honesty." Linda sat down in the chair across from Evelyn's desk. "Want to talk about it?" "I think I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my career, by walking away from the deal. By going against my father's judgment. He thinks I'm losing my nerve." Linda was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" Evelyn looked up at her assistant, this woman who'd been with the company longer than anyone, who'd seen her grow from an uncertain 22-year-old to the CEO she was today. "I think Marcus Reed saved us from losing millions of dollars. And I think my father can't accept that insight came from someone he doesn't consider important." "Ah," Linda said softly. "Now we're getting to the real issue." "What do you mean?" "It's not about the building, Evelyn. It's about who gets to be heard." The words hit Evelyn like a revelation. Linda was right. This wasn't just about maintenance costs and profit margins. It was about whose voice mattered, whose intelligence was valued, whose perspective was worth considering. "I need to talk to Marcus again," Evelyn said. "He doesn't start work until 8. "I know. I'll wait." That evening, Evelyn found herself in the coffee shop again, watching for Marcus. When he arrived at 6:15, she waved him over to her table. "Ms. Hart, you're becoming a regular here. I wanted to update you on the building situation, and to ask for your help with something else." Marcus sat down cautiously. "What kind of help?" "I need you to come to a meeting tomorrow morning to explain the maintenance issues to my father and the board." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. "You want me to do what?" "Just tell them what you told me. About the roof, the heating system, all of it." "Ms. Hart, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" Marcus looked around the coffee shop, as if making sure no one was listening. "Because I'm the janitor. They're not going to want to hear from me about $50 million deals." "But you're right. Your analysis is correct." "That doesn't matter." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "You know it doesn't matter." Evelyn felt a surge of frustration. It should matter. Should and does are two different things. They sat in silence for a moment. Evelyn watched Marcus's face, seeing the resignation there, the acceptance of a world that didn't value what he had to offer. "What if we changed that?" she asked. "Changed what?" "What if we made it matter? What if we made them listen?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Ms. Hart, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you can't change how the world works just because you want to. Maybe not the whole world, but maybe this one small piece of it." Something in her voice made Marcus look at her more carefully. "This isn't really about the building anymore, is it?" "No," Evelyn admitted. "It's not." "Then what's it about?" Evelyn thought about her answer carefully. "It's about fairness. It's about seeing people for who they really are, instead of just their job title. It's about listening to voices that usually get ignored." Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. "Ms. Hart, why does this matter to you so much?" The question went straight to the heart of something Evelyn had been trying not to examine too closely. Why did this matter? Why did Marcus's situation bother her so much? "Because I'm tired of living in a world where only certain people get to be heard," she said finally. "Because intelligence shouldn't be invisible just because it comes from unexpected places. Because you deserve better than what life has given you." Marcus stared at her for a moment. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're brilliant and kind and careful about details. I know you care about your mother and sacrificed your own dreams for your family. I know you see things that other people miss. And I know you could do anything if someone just gave you the chance." Marcus was very still. "Ms. Hart, what exactly are you saying?" Evelyn's heart was beating faster now. She was stepping into territory she didn't fully understand, but she couldn't seem to stop herself. "I'm saying that maybe this is about more than just a building. Maybe it's about two people recognizing something valuable in each other." The silence stretched between them. Marcus looked down at his hands, then back at her face. "This is dangerous territory," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because you're you and I'm me. Because morning always comes and nothing really changes." "What if something could change?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled sadly. "Ms. Hart, you're talking about crossing lines that don't usually get crossed. Maybe it's time some lines got crossed." "And what happens when your father finds out you're getting business advice from the janitor? What happens when people start talking about the CEO who's spending her evenings with the cleaning staff?" The questions hung in the air between them. Evelyn knew Marcus was right to be cautious. The professional world they lived in had rules, expectations, boundaries that weren't supposed to be crossed. But looking at him, really seeing him, she couldn't bring herself to care about those rules. Marcus, let me ask you something. If none of that mattered, if there were no job titles or expectations or rules about who's supposed to talk to whom, what would you want? He looked at her for a long time before answering. That's not a fair question. Why not? Because those things do matter. They matter a lot. But if they didn't? Marcus sighed deeply. If they didn't, I'd want to finish my education. Get back into building management. Maybe start my own consulting firm someday. And what? Evelyn's heart was pounding now. And what would you want with me? The question hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Marcus looked at her with something between hope and fear. Ms. Hart. Evelyn. My name is Evelyn. Evelyn, he said carefully. What are we doing here? I don't know, she admitted. But I know I feel more alive talking to you than I have in years. I know you see things I miss and think in ways that challenge me. I know that when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be curious about someone. Marcus was very quiet. And I know that if we keep having these conversations, one of us is going to get hurt. Maybe, Evelyn said. But maybe some things are worth the risk. They sat in silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The coffee shop buzzed around them, full of people heading home to their normal lives, their safe routines, their predictable relationships. Finally, Marcus spoke. If I come to your meeting tomorrow, if I explain the building issues to your board, what happens after that? I don't know, Evelyn said honestly. But I think we deserve the chance to find out. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, Evelyn felt something shifting inside her chest. She was about to ask Marcus Reed to step into her world, to speak truth to people who might not want to hear it, to risk his job for the sake of honesty. But more than that, she was asking him to trust her. And she was admitting to herself that somewhere in the space of 2 evening conversations, her feelings for him had moved far beyond professional respect. Tomorrow morning would change everything. The only question was whether that change would bring them together or tear them apart. The morning of the board meeting, Evelyn arrived at the office an hour early. Her hands shook slightly as she arranged her papers in the conference room. At 8:30, Marcus would walk into a room full of people who saw him only as the man who cleaned their offices. He would have to convince them that their $50 million deal was a mistake. She'd barely slept, thinking about what she was asking him to do. What if they humiliated him? What if her father reacted badly? What if she was putting Marcus in an impossible position just because she couldn't bear to back down? Linda arrived with coffee and took one look at Evelyn's face. You're having second thoughts. What if this ruins everything for him? And what if it changes everything for him? At 8:15, Marcus appeared in the doorway. He wore dark slacks and a white button-down shirt instead of his usual uniform. He looked nervous, but determined. Ready? Evelyn asked. No, Marcus said honestly. But I'm here. Daniel Hart entered the conference room at exactly 8:30, followed by Tom Keller and the 3 board members. They all stopped short when they saw Marcus standing beside Evelyn at the head of the table. Evelyn, her father said slowly. What's going on? I'd like you to meet Marcus Reed. He's the person who identified the problems with the Meridian building maintenance costs. Tom Keller's face went through several expressions before settling on disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. Mr. Reed has a background in building management, Evelyn continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. He's going to walk us through the issues we missed in our analysis. One of the board members, Robert Chen, leaned forward in his chair. Ms. Hart, with all due respect, What qualifications does Mr. Reed have to evaluate a $50 million investment? Marcus stepped forward slightly. I studied building management and facilities engineering at Metro Community College for 2 years. I've also spent 15 years around construction and building maintenance through my father's work and my current position. His voice was calm and professional, but Evelyn could see the tension in his shoulders. That's hardly the same as professional consulting experience, Tom said dismissively. You're right, Marcus agreed. But sometimes an outside perspective can catch things that familiar eyes miss. Daniel Hart studied Marcus carefully. All right, Mr. Reed, show us what we missed. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus walked them through the building analysis with the same careful detail he'd shown Evelyn. He had prepared charts showing comparable maintenance costs for similar historic buildings. He explained the specific challenges of slate roofing, steam heating systems, and 100-year-old foundations with the precision of someone who truly understood how buildings worked. The room grew quieter as he spoke. Even Tom Keller stopped interrupting to listen to Marcus's explanations. The annual maintenance costs we projected at $250,000 are realistic for a modern building, Marcus concluded. But for a structure this age, with these systems, $600,000 is a conservative estimate. In years when major systems fail, costs could reach well over $1 million. Robert Chen was taking notes. These comparable building costs, where did you get this data? Public maintenance records from similar properties around the city. Most of this information is available if you know where to look. When Marcus finished, the conference room was silent. Daniel Hart stared at the charts spread across the table. Tom Keller looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. Mr. Reed, said another board member, Patricia Williams. If your analysis is correct, this changes the entire financial picture of the deal. Yes, ma'am, it does. Daniel looked up at his daughter. Evelyn, have you verified these numbers independently? I spent 2 nights researching everything Mr. Reed presented. His analysis is accurate. Tom Keller finally found his voice. This is ridiculous. We can't make investment decisions based on... He stopped himself just short of saying something that would have made the situation much worse. Based on what, Tom? Evelyn asked quietly. Tom's face flushed. Based on incomplete information from someone with no professional credentials. His information is complete and accurate, Evelyn said. More accurate than our initial analysis. Marcus spoke up quietly. Mr. Keller, I understand your frustration. Nobody wants to walk away from a deal they've worked hard on. But if the numbers don't work, they don't work. Patricia Williams turned to Marcus. Mr. Reed, what would you recommend we do? Marcus looked at Evelyn for a moment, then back at the board. Look for properties with lower maintenance risks, or if you're committed to historic renovation, budget realistically for the true costs involved. There are good deals out there, but this isn't one of them. After another hour of discussion, the board voted unanimously to walk away from the Meridian building. Tom Keller left without saying goodbye to anyone. Daniel Hart remained behind as the others filed out. Mr. Reed, Daniel said, thank you for your analysis. It was illuminating. You're welcome, sir. Daniel turned to his daughter. Evelyn, I'd like to speak with you privately. Marcus started to leave, but Evelyn caught his arm. Stay, please. Daniel raised an eyebrow but didn't object. Evelyn, what exactly is going on here? We just saved the company from a bad investment. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Evelyn took a deep breath. This was the moment she'd been dreading and anticipating all morning. Marcus has been helping me understand things about our business that I was missing. He's incredibly knowledgeable about building systems and property management. He's a janitor. He's a person, Evelyn said firmly. A person with valuable skills and insights who hasn't been given the opportunities he deserves. Daniel looked between his daughter and Marcus, clearly trying to understand the dynamic between them. And you think it's your job to give him those opportunities? I think it's the right thing to do. Marcus stepped forward. Mr. Hart, I don't want to cause problems for your daughter or your company. I was just trying to be helpful. Daniel studied Marcus for a long moment. Mr. Reed, what do you want from this situation? The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard. I'm sorry? What are you hoping to gain from helping my daughter with business decisions? Evelyn felt her chest tighten with anger and embarrassment. Dad, that's not fair. It's a reasonable question, Daniel said. Mr. Reed? Marcus looked at Evelyn, then back at her father. I want to finish my education and get back into building management professionally, but mostly, I just want to be useful. I want my knowledge to matter. And my daughter? What do you want from her? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Evelyn held her breath, wondering how Marcus would navigate the minefield her father had just laid out. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady and honest. I respect your daughter tremendously. She's brilliant and fair and willing to listen to perspectives that most people in her position would ignore. If she's willing to be my friend, I'd consider myself lucky. Friend, Daniel repeated. Yes, sir. Daniel looked at his daughter. And you, Evelyn, is friendship what you're looking for? Evelyn felt her face flush. The question forced her to confront feelings she'd been trying not to examine too closely. Was friendship what she wanted with Marcus, or had her feelings already moved far beyond that? I want Marcus to have the opportunities he deserves, she said carefully. And I want to continue learning from him. That's not what I asked. Evelyn looked at Marcus, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that whatever she said next would change everything. Dad, I care about Marcus, more than just professionally. The admission hung in the air between them. Daniel's expression grew very serious. Evelyn, you need to be careful here. Mixing business with personal feelings is dangerous, and the two of you come from very different worlds. I know, Evelyn said quietly, but I also know that he's the most genuinely good person I've met in years, and he challenges me to be better. Daniel was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he turned to Marcus. Mr. Reed, I'm going to be direct with you. My daughter is in a vulnerable position. She has money, influence, and responsibilities that make her a target for people with questionable motives. If you hurt her or take advantage of her trust, you'll answer to me. Do we understand each other? Marcus met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir, we do. And Mr. Hart? Your daughter doesn't need protection from me. She's stronger and smarter than you're giving her credit for. Something in Daniel's expression shifted slightly. You may be right about that. After her father left, Evelyn and Marcus stood alone in the conference room. The morning had been intense, emotional, and transformative in ways neither had fully expected. Thank you, Evelyn said softly. For everything. For the building analysis. For facing down my father and the board. For being honest about your feelings. Thank you for listening to me in the first place. And for trusting me enough to put me in that room. They looked at each other for a moment, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them over the past few days. The professional boundaries that had initially defined their relationship had dissolved, replaced by something deeper and more complex. Marcus, Evelyn said carefully. What happens now? I don't know, he admitted. This is all new territory for me. For me too. Marcus smiled slightly. Your father wasn't wrong, you know. We do come from different worlds. Maybe, but maybe that's not as important as I used to think. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but it won't be easy. Evelyn stepped closer to him. Are you willing to try? To see where this goes? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. This brilliant, complicated woman who had somehow seen past his job title to the person he really was, who had risked her professional reputation to give him a voice in a room where his voice had never mattered before. "Yeah," he said softly. "I'm willing to try." 3 months later, Evelyn sat in her office reviewing applications for a new position she'd created, Director of Property Analysis. The job description called for someone with deep knowledge of building systems, maintenance planning, and renovation cost analysis. Marcus had gotten his first interview that morning. His resume now listed not only his community college coursework, but also his recent successful analysis of the Meridian Building project. Evelyn had also quietly arranged for him to audit several business courses at the university. Linda knocked on her door. How did the interview go? Professionally, he was by far the best candidate. Personally, I had to excuse myself from the decision to avoid any appearance of favoritism. And the board voted unanimously to offer him the position. Evelyn smiled, remembering Marcus's face when she'd told him about the job opening. The hope that had flickered back to life in his eyes. The quiet determination to prove himself worthy of the opportunity. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, with both of them aware of the scrutiny they faced. But week by week, conversation by conversation, they had built something real together. Something based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. Marcus still worked nights while he transitioned to his new role, but now their evening conversations happened in Evelyn's office, where they reviewed building proposals and discussed renovation strategies, where he taught her to see the hidden complexities in structures she'd previously taken for granted. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Got the job. Dinner to celebrate?" Evelyn typed back, "I know a great coffee shop." As she gathered her things to leave for the day, Evelyn reflected on how much had changed since that first evening, when Marcus had hesitantly pointed out the flaws in her biggest deal. She'd gained a business partner whose insights had already saved the company millions of dollars. More importantly, she'd found someone who saw her not as a title or a position, but simply as Evelyn. The elevator carried her down to the lobby, where Marcus waited with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that still made her heart race. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked. Evelyn took his hand as they walked toward the exit. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual energy, full of people rushing toward their own uncertain futures. But for the first time in years, Evelyn felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "Ready," she said, and meant it completely. Love had arrived quietly, just as the logline had promised, not through grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but through the simple recognition of 2 people who finally saw each other clearly. And in that recognition, they had found something worth building together, one honest conversation at a time.